Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, the results of the Romania Muscle Fest Pro Amateur Competition. The overall winner of that show is Xiaoming Yang, and I'm hoping I'm not pronouncing that wrong, but he was extraordinarily impressive at this amateur show, winning the super heavyweight category and the overall, and earning his IFBB Pro card. Now, the interesting part about this story is that today's show in Romania was only the amateur. Tomorrow's show, Sunday, that's the professional portion of the show. And the interesting part about this is that now that Xiaoming Yang is a pro, he's going to be competing in tomorrow's Romania Muscle Fest Pro. And that is significant because of the fact that this Romania Muscle Fest is the last qualifying opportunity for men's open bodybuilding to get to the Olympia. Now, going into this show, a lot of people were talking about Brett Wilkin as being really the winner before the show even happened. He's the biggest and most recognizable name in that lineup. I think a lot of people are predicting him to win. But Xiaoming Yang was so impressive at the amateur portion of this show. He's got so much muscle. His quads are insane. Crazy roundness and fullness in the arms and shoulders. My only real criticism of him would be his chest. That's really, to me, looked like the weaker link. And maybe he needs a little bit deeper, more separated abs. But now that people saw how crazy he looked at this amateur show, after being relatively unknown, I mean, he only had 3,000 followers on Instagram going into this show, going into this amateur show. But now that people have seen how he looked at today's show, there's people predicting that he could win tomorrow. Because like I said, it's not the deepest lineup at this Romania Muscle Fest. Brett, I think, is arguably the favorite to win. But there's really almost no recognizable names besides Milan Sadik. And Roman Fritz, he's in there too. But honestly, I think this is an interesting turn of events because I really do think this guy looked incredible. This amateur winner, I think he will be first call out at this pro show. Whether or not he's going to win, I think that's a different conversation. But it would be interesting if some new guy came out of nowhere, won the amateurs, competed in the pros the next day, and stole that Olympia qualification. I shouldn't say stole, but nabbed that Olympia qualification from a guy like Brett Wilkin. This has been the year of the up-and-comer. All these guys, Andrew Jack, Michael Krizo, GoodVito. What a perfect wrap-up to the end of the competitive season, the end of the qualifying window. If some guy came out of nowhere, won his first pro show ever, and qualified for the Olympia just like Michael Krizo, except Michael Krizo didn't really come out of nowhere. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about the new overall champion and the new IFBB Pro, Xiaoming Yang. I honestly think this guy looks incredible. Now, we got a couple of physique updates of Brett Wilkin from one day out. So again, today is Saturday. The pro portion of the show is tomorrow. So Brett Wilkin at one day out, he does look really impressive and still, I think, is the favorite to win this show based on what we've seen from him so far. Like I said, his competitive resume is pretty impressive as far as his past placing. Some of the guys that he's competed against, like he was runner-up to Hunter Labrada, and I think that was close. He looked pretty good at the Arnold Classic, even though where he placed wasn't really where a lot of people were predicting him to place. I still think he stacked up pretty well, considering his lack of experience as a pro. But you did get a front lat spread and an abs and thighs from Brett at one day out. I think he looks very impressive. Now, of course, he is working with Matt Jansen, which I think is a good segue into the next story here. So Matt Jansen, this is a quote from Buys and Tries. He says, the reference point you guys are using to place Charles this year is off big time. He's never looked like this, and he's up 15 pounds, I'm assuming from the last time he stepped on stage. So obviously, he's talking about Charles Griffen here. Charles was a guy that competed earlier on in the season, and he really made a lot of waves, especially against Blessing Awodabu. You could have made the argument that he should have beat Blessing at that second show that Blessing won. So in the latter portion of this video, I wanted to talk about some of these guys that are in this Olympia lineup because, again, there's like almost 40 guys competing in the Men's Open Olympia or at least qualified for the Men's Open Olympia. And a lot of times we tend to only talk about maybe the top 10 or the most recognizable 10 names in that lineup. But there's guys like Charles Griffen, who he made dramatic improvements to even qualify for the Olympia this year. And what we're seeing from him so far, especially now at 5 weeks out, I think is really impressive. And I think because he competed so far back in the season, so early on, he is a guy that a lot of people are forgetting about because even when he qualified, he wasn't a name that was a super big name. But you see these updates, and I think he looks granite hard. One of the things that he's improved the most upon, I think, is his midsection. He's doing this vacuum pose thing where almost every other posing video. He's doing a vacuum pose, and his waist in the past had been a problem for him, but ever since he started training this vacuum pose posing practice, he's really improved that. And I think when he hits the vacuum pose and a lot of his mandatories, it looks a lot better than a crunched abdominal for him. And I think that's kind of a perfect example of the purpose that a vacuum pose can serve, is on some physiques it can really enhance the physique compared to the alternative. And I think Charles is one of those guys where that is applicable. I think he looks a lot better with a vacuum pose than without. He realizes that, he acknowledges that, and he applied that to his posing routine. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you guys think people are forgetting about Charles, counting him out? And where do you have Charles placing at the 2022 Olympia? Do you think he's able to crack the top 10 or do even better than that? Like I said, it's so competitive this year. It's cracking the top 10 is going to be a major accomplishment for these guys, let alone making the first call out. So it's going to be a very competitive Olympia. And Charles, he does look incredible. I do think he's a threat, at least for cracking the top 10. And here's another guy that I think not a lot of people are talking about going into the Olympia, Vlad Suhoruchko. He's a really young guy. He's in his early 20s, and he's a really big guy. But the thing that's always impressed me about Vlad is his conditioning. And his Instagram posts are one thing, but he still looks pretty good on stage. But he's a really, really big bodybuilder, and the fact that he's posting this update with striated glutes at 5 weeks out, I think his conditioning, especially in his lower body, has been very impressive, and I think he's got a pretty good track record with it. And I think he's a little bit of a wild card for a potential top 10 guy. Maybe not at this point in his career, a first call-out or top 6 guy, but this is a guy that I think we need to be looking at his updates as well, even though not a lot of people are talking about him. I think Vlad Suhoruchko is a guy that has a very bright future, especially considering how young he is, and the fact that I think this is his first Olympia. So another thing that I wanted to take a look at here is Nick Walker in Flexos' gym, the Dragon's Lair. And he's with Milos Sarshev, and with Milos, he's kind of posing for Milos a little bit, and Milos is kind of examining him here at around, I think this was around 5.5 weeks out. Right now, we're exactly 5 weeks out. But in this here, I think it was 5.5 to 6 weeks out whenever it was filmed. And Milos looks very impressed with not only the size of Nick, you can see him kind of doing this thing where he's trying to fit his hands around Nick's arms, but the other thing is how thin Nick's skin is at this point in the prep. Obviously, there's not going to be really any body fat on him at this point, but the thinness of his skin for him being the size that he is, I think is very impressive. And the fact that, you know, Milos is a conditioning guy, and to impress Milos is not easy. And for him to look as impressed as he did with Nick in this video, I think is a good sign, because obviously the thing that we already know about Nick is that he's a big dude. He's a mass monster. Everybody's going to expect to see a big freaky version of Nick. But the kind of the wild card thing here with Nick is going to be conditioning. Like I said earlier, I really think that Nick has the potential to be a top 3 guy, but I think the thing that he's going to really have to focus on is, like I said, to crack the top 3, you've got Haney Games, you've got Brandon Curry, you've got Big Ramy. So with Big Ramy, you've got the biggest guy in the lineup. With Brandon Curry, you've got the most aesthetic guy in the lineup. And with Haney Games, you've got the most conditioned guy in the lineup. So when you talk about a guy like Nick Walker and the potential that he has to crack the top 3, the thing you've got to consider is how is he going to get there? Because right now he's not bigger than Big Ramy. So he's probably not going to beat Big Ramy. Right now he's not more aesthetic than Brandon Curry. So he's not going to beat Brandon Curry, likely. But I think 2 physiques that are a lot more comparable are Haney Games and Nick Walker. So one thing that Nick Walker could do, because I do think he's bigger than Haney Games, if he came in more conditioned than Haney, that would be where I see Nick kind of making his way into that top 3. So I think the thing that we really need to be honing in on when we look at these physique updates from Nick Walker is how conditioned is he? Is it likely that he could come in more conditioned than Haney Games? Because I think that would be his biggest probability of cracking the top 3, because it seems like the past couple of years the battle has been between Brandon and Ramy. Ramy's the most conditioned guy. He's a Mr. Olympia returning defending champion, and Brandon is the only other former Mr. Olympia champion in that lineup, and he's the most aesthetic guy. So those 2 guys I think will continue to battle, but that 3rd place spot I think is the spot that Nick has the best shot at, and hopefully if he did crack the top 3, he would get a comparison with Brandon and Ramy, and maybe you could make an argument for him over Brandon someday. But another thing that I wanted to show you guys is we did get a front double bicep from Nick Walker at 5 weeks out, and I wanted to compare that to another guy who I think his most impressive pose is the front double bicep, and that is GoodVito, who will be competing in just 2 weeks from today to try to earn his pro card. We just saw him compete at a regional show to qualify for that pro qualifier. But I wanted to put these side by side just to show how impressive Nick is, because obviously a lot of people are talking about GoodVito right now, and one of the things that they think is the most impressive part about him is that front double bicep, but you put it next to Nick Walker's, and I think it looks a lot less impressive. He's still crazy impressive, but Nick Walker, I think, just the sheer size and the dominance of that front double bicep, I think, is hard to get past. So put it next to a hyped up guy like GoodVito that's further along, by the way, in his prep than Nick Walker, and it shows you just how good Nick Walker really is and just how much work GoodVito still has to do, even though I do think he's going to earn his pro card, and I do think he will immediately be competitive as a pro, but I think that's how good Nick Walker is. Put these side by side. Who do you guys prefer in this pose? Now, the next story I just wanted to include kind of for fun here. The Haney Games is this weekend in Georgia. I thought this was kind of an interesting collab post from Haney, because he posted a thank you to Jeezy for attending the Haney Games this weekend. And I thought it was kind of a weird crossover. Obviously, you guys know, if you're a fan of rap, who Jeezy is, and you wouldn't think he would be attending a bodybuilding show, let alone the Haney one, and you probably wouldn't be expecting to see them post a picture together on social media, but I thought that was cool. And I wanted to give that kind of a brief cameo in this video, because I just thought it was really cool, a cool crossover picture. Now, next up, we did get another physique update from Michael Krizo just a day ago. And it's kind of the same story with all the updates from Krizo. We kind of know what his strong points are. We know what he needs to work on. I think conditioning is the thing that he needs to improve upon the most. Alongside with his posing, we can all agree that the conditioning at the Prague Pro wasn't the best. The posing wasn't great. It was very shaky. And he clearly didn't have the stamina to really get through those tough comparisons that Steve Weinberger was putting him through. And I think that was something that he's going to struggle with at the Olympia if he does not fix before then. He's got 5 weeks to work on it, but how much time is that really to make a drastic change? That's what we're going to find out. So the updates that we keep seeing from Krizo, we already know. We know he's crazy big. We know he's freaky. He's got these crazy arms. A lot of the updates are just kind of like this, kind of a crazy side shot of his arms where he looks like a freaking superhuman. Bottom line, it's kind of the same thing that we used to say about Big Ramy before he started winning. His name's Big Ramy. We know he's big. That's not going to be the factor, the deciding factor at the Olympia. The deciding factor is going to be condition. How conditioned is Michael Krizo going to be? Is he going to be conditioned to beat a guy even like Ian Valliere? If you guys read the comments on my last video, it was quite the debate when I said that I would predict that Krizo would beat even Ian. A lot of people have Ian over Michael Krizo. So it's kind of a big question mark, because if Krizo comes in conditioned, I don't see why he wouldn't beat Ian. But it's still something that people don't seem to have a lot of confidence in as far as how conditioned he's actually going to look at the Olympia. Because so far, he's had all this hype going in, and we've seen him at 2 competitions. The Olympia Amateur in Italy, and we just saw him at the Prague Pro a couple weeks ago. And at neither show, I don't think anybody would describe him as being the most conditioned guy on stage. So it's still something that we haven't quite seen from him yet, is Olympia-level conditioning. And I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think we will see that from him in 5 short weeks in Vegas? Let me know down below. And that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you leave a like on the video, a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. Click that bell notification icon if you never want to miss an upload. We've got a lot of bodybuilding news coming up with the Olympia just right on the horizon. So if you don't want to miss any of that, make sure you click that bell, click that subscribe button. Every time that you see an upload, or every time I upload, you will see it. Thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.